Welcome into Indiana Football in Review. I'm your host, not with the most, with the least, John Alden. Alongside with me tonight, Mitchell Paige, former wide receiver, walk-on scholarship superstar. No Dustin Schutte tonight. He's busy with personal matters. So just going to get me and Mitchell's takes on some Indiana football. Definitely a lot of good things to take away from Indiana's Week 2 matchup. Indiana defeated Indiana State 41-7. They opened up the offensive playbook. I do believe we have a starting quarterback based on what we saw from Taven Jackson and Brendan Sorsby. Taven Jackson did get the start in this game as we expected it to be, and he kind of put on a show. I mean, it wasn't anything electric. It wasn't, it didn't remind anybody necessarily of the years of Nate Sudfeld and that kind of a thing, but it was a step in the right direction that I don't think Indiana fans have seen since Kalen DeBoer was the offensive coordinator with Michael Penix. And so a lot of positive things on the offensive side. And obviously, Mitchell, we were texting the other night during the game. You seem pretty excited about where things were at. What are your thoughts on what happened against the Sycamores?
Yeah, I think it's important to reference what we talked about last week, where the goal of the game was to give yourselves a chance. It was ugly at times against Ohio State, but you also have to understand what they were dealing with, right? You have two freshman quarterbacks that have taken 11 snaps, I think it was, between them. You're thrown to not just the Wolves. These are hungry Wolves in Ohio State. I think Ohio State had been disrespected a little bit over the course of the offseason. Big Bad Michigan, the team up north for them getting all the accolades. So that's a team that's out for blood. And when you're Indiana, a team that hasn't had a ton of success in the last two seasons, haven't really put up a fight in the last two seasons, you want to give yourself a chance. And that's exactly what they did. The play calling was very conservative. But when you look at the game track, they had a chance to win the game against Ohio State midway in the third quarter, maybe even end of the third quarter and beyond. So I was really happy to see that last week. And we referenced that in the reaction show. But I think what we were looking for was, now that we're playing an Indiana State that wasn't as tough as Ohio State, I want to see the playbook opened a little bit. I want to see them just roll the dice. Let's see what happens. Let's throw the ball around. Let's get the guys in space. Let's open up a little bit and probably show a little more what we're going to see the rest of the way, right? You get them trial by fire with Ohio State, roll the balls out. Let's just see what we can get out of these two guys. And Taven Jackson absolutely stood up to the challenge. He was ready. I thought he made some phenomenal throws. Brendan Sorsby, I thought it was interesting. It just never felt like he was in a position when there was momentum for whatever reason.
Yeah. I remember specifically when I don't know if it was his first drive or his second drive, but that was when Jalen Lucas gave up the fumble. That was Indiana State's only score of the game.
Yeah, exactly. And they were driving, right? So I think that they probably score on that drive too. And you walk away feeling a little bit better about Brendan Sorsby. I thought he played phenomenal with what he had. I was just really impressed by both of them, to be totally honest. I think we will see number one, QB1 is going to be Taven Jackson, just because you can't argue. 18 for 21, almost 250 yards, took care of the ball. I think that was the most important thing. The only thing that could have really been bad in a game like that is if you make some bonehead mistakes, right? Throw into double coverage, throw across your body when you're flushed out of the pocket. And neither of them really did that. I thought it was just a really sound game plan. I thought that Walt Bell put him in a position to utilize what they're good at. He made sure the run game was getting into the open space. We played off the run to open up the pass. And I think that's kind of the shift is happening in all of college football, kind of that two tight end, two running back set. I saw that all weekend. It's like, I don't know where it came from, but last year it was try to score 1,000, and now it feels like teams are cyclically, however you say that, coming back.
There's more game managing, I feel like.
Yes, exactly. It's not a hurry up and throw it 70 times. And I think Indiana's primed and ready for that. I think their offensive line played a lot better. Obviously, it's not the same opponent, but it was a
You've had two different ends of the spectrum in week 1 and week 2. You had one of the toughest opponents on your schedule in Ohio State and to start off the season, and then you have what should be your easiest opponent with Indiana State. So you kind of got the best and worst of each world, I guess, if that makes sense. And you got to see the offense get confident against a team that they were definitely way more overpowered against, whereas you knew the other in week 1 that you were going against somebody who knew that even though that you're both Big Ten teams, you know that Ohio State has the superior talent, even though you want to be able to go toe-to-toe with them.
Yeah, I think we talked about it. Ohio State, maybe outside, Aaron Casey is playing about as good a football as anybody that I've watched on any team in America. So maybe outside of him, Ohio State's starter at every position was better than our guy. And that's just a fact. That's just what it is. So when you talk about game management, give yourself a chance. That's what we did. Now you go to week 2, we were better at every position than Indiana State. And I think that we leaned on them. We did what Division I teams are supposed to do. Use your strength, your bigs to lean on those kind of guys. And into the third, fourth quarter, you start to pull away just because the depth, right? They have good players, but it's just different. That's the Division I depth. That's what makes those teams different. That's what separates them. So I was proud of the way they played on offense and sticking to their guns and letting the kids play.
And one thing that makes me happy too, the last 2 years when Idaho was their FCS opponent, it felt like Indiana let Idaho hang around for a lot longer than they were supposed to. Indiana got off running. They were up 21-0 at the end of the first quarter. Obviously, you had a bit of a sloppy second quarter, not nearly as polished as things were going to get things started. But I don't want to call it a complete game because it's not what Indiana put together. But it's the first time in a while when Indiana playing an opponent like this where I felt like they were in control from the very beginning with subtle, little hiccups in between right before halftime.
Yeah, that's what we were looking for. That's what we were hoping for. This needed to be a game that we won by 40, but most importantly, we controlled it from the jump. I mean, there's a lot of teams in college football that didn't do that. Look at Georgia and Ball State. Another in-state university went down to Georgia.
Yeah.
And that game was close at halftime. Now it winds up being 50-7 because that's what bigger, better teams do. And I thought that that's exactly what Indiana did. They handled their business. Football is a long game, right? There's going to be drives that stall. You're going to get penalties that shoot you in the foot. I thought they were a lot better. There's still a long way to go. We were talking about it. That's kind of become a staple of the program for whatever reason. Just undisciplined, silly penalties.
And on the special teams, how do you run into the punter twice?
15 times. They didn't call it a couple times. It felt like every time that they went back to punt, you were holding your breath. And I mean, that it's not that hard. It's just a lapse of, and maybe it's playing too hard. And that's
I almost feel like it's the fact that they know they're playing somebody like Indiana State. So they just want to show them how much more aggressive and powerful they are. I know that sounds silly, and maybe from your experience, you feel like you just want to show off and, run up the score, that kind of thing.
Yeah. You always hear about the stats game, right? I can say that we didn't do that because we knew we had to score every possession. So every game for us felt like we needed to be as locked in as we could possibly be because we had to score 50. And it's not easy to score 50. And even getting to 44, that's a phenomenal output on offense. And to give up no points on defense, I don't care who you're playing. Like I said, it's a long game. College football is a long game. There's a lot of plays, a lot of chance for busted coverage, busted fits, and Indiana just didn't do that all game.
Less than 100 yards as well. Only 72 rushing yards allowed, 21 passing yards allowed.
Wow. How many first downs?
It is Indiana State, but it is nice to see that a lot of people were worried about the defense after what they were losing, and it seemed like you have a very sound unit 2 weeks into the year, which is great.
To give up 8 first downs. This is a Division I team. It's Division I AA, but they play in the best conference in Division I AA. They're going against good football teams every week. To give up 8 first downs, 2 for 11 on third down, Those are winning numbers. Penalties 70 for 60, that's not. But you look down just the team stats, they're winning numbers. I thought their quarterback or wide receivers made competitive plays. I was really impressed, obviously, with Omar Cooper. I thought he showed some bounce. He showed some speed, showed some toughness. Be curious. We haven't really heard anything about Cam Camper, who I think
and they're going to keep that under wraps until the injury report comes out.
Yes, exactly. You hope that it's just a hyperextended knee or something.
And he was standing on the sidelines after his injury, so it's not likely going to be something season-ending like we saw last year.
Exactly, and I think what's most important is he was smiling, having a good time. He wasn't, because I think if you have that kind of injury, even if you're winning by 40, it's still hard in the back of your mind for somebody that's that explosive and going to be that important to this offense to have that kind of body language on the sideline. Shows a lot of positive signs, and I'm hopeful that he'll be back against Louisville. They're going to need him. Because I think that we're going to have to get even more vertical. I love that we were taking shots, and I think that this is I'm going to keep talking about the quarterbacks, but I love Taven Jackson. Feels a little bit more like a cowboy back there. Brendan Sorsby feels like a game management quarterback, and I think that Taven will have to learn some of that eventually. But with a young group of guys and a mentality to take some shots down the field, give your guys a chance, I think that's one of the most important traits a quarterback can have. And Taven has that maybe in excess. But I think that that's going to be really beneficial to the Hoosiers as we get.
Yeah, you definitely can tell that Taven Jackson wants to be the face of the program. If you were watching the broadcast when he was on the bench, he found the camera and of course had to make his presence known. So I think as long as it's a good kind of cockiness, I think you're in good shape right there. Now, obviously, he's a redshirt freshman. He's going to have growing pains, especially when you're playing tougher opponents. But it's going to be really interesting to see what he does this weekend. And again, we don't know that Taven Jackson's going to be the starter. It is essentially just assumed at this point by us and by whoever you may be listening to. As we know, Tom Allen typically keeps those kinds of things a secret until the very last minute. But I think it would be very shocking if anyone other than Taven Jackson trotted out onto the field against Louisville to start.
Yeah, I think he absolutely earned it. He was in control. He felt like the leader of the team. Guys are looking to him. And I think that all you needed to know is when we put the backups in, Sorsby was out there with them. I think that all but kind of guarantees where we're at. And there's absolutely going to be growing pains. Just a kind of departing thought for me. I really hope that when you have a battle like this, sometimes it can be hard for the starter, especially when they're both young, to be constantly looking over your shoulder, especially after a starter has been named for the kind of up in the air.
Like now it's his to lose.
Yes, exactly. And you make one bad throw, you really need to, as a coach, make sure that you are instilling all the confidence in the world. Hey, you're our guy. He's going to make bad plays. He's going to make a wrong read, and he's going to throw it right to the other team probably a couple times this year, and you just got to ride with him. He's young. He's got all the talent. He's got crazy ability to just let it loose, but you got to let it loose without him having to look over his shoulder, because I think that's the worst thing you can do, especially to a young kid like that.
One other thing I want to get your thoughts on before we wrap things up. We really haven't talked about the running game. Jalen Lucas was an absolute monster against Indiana State. I can't believe they ran the exact same play 2 times when they were just, I guess it's about 25 yards out, and it worked exactly the same. Now, obviously, that's not going to be the case when you're playing Big Ten caliber opponents, but it's nice to see that Indiana's All-American was able to do something like that and, get that confidence in week 2.
Yeah, he's obviously electrifying. Every time he touches the ball, it feels like something crazy is going to happen. He was powerful between the tackles, but Jalen Lucas is deservedly going to get all of the hype. He is the All-American. You put him back there on kick and punt returns, look out. But I think the most important kid on their offense is Josh Henderson. And the reason that I say that is I got to play with Jordan Howard. And Jordan Howard was never really a flashy back. but he averaged 6 yards a carry. And when you're able to get 5, 6, just over and over and over again, that allows you to get those second and short, open up the playbook, let Taven Jackson throw it all over the place, or have some speed option, which I don't love the speed option. I want to say that, but get Jalen Lucas out in space. You have to keep the offense on schedule. You're going to hear that a lot. It's just being on schedule, being ahead of the chains, because once you get behind the chains, because Jalen Lucas is quick, he's bouncy, but he's not going to be just stiff arm and breaking tackles. There's a chance that you give him the ball, we're losing 3 yards. There's a chance. He's just little. That's what it is. I am too. So I feel like I can say that. Josh Henderson being able to battle when the offensive line breaks down and still get 2 yards, that play is so important for the momentum of a drive. And it's never going to be looked upon as flashy. No one's ever going to talk about it. But I thought he was impressive, as impressive as anyone on Saturday. He made something out of nothing 5, 10 times where you felt like, oh gosh, here we go again. We missed a block, and all of a sudden it's 2nd and 7 instead of 2nd and 13. And that, like I said, there's a lot of plays for 2nd and 7, 2nd and 5. There's not a lot of plays for 2nd and 13. And I thought he's vital to the offense, getting him going, getting him in a rhythm. I thought they were really, what's the word I'm looking for? They were balanced, really balanced. And
something we haven't been able to say in at least 3 or 4 years, I feel like.
Gosh, yeah, they were extremely balanced. When you play in Indiana State, that's what you need to be, and no complaints. You go out, you do your job, and that's exactly what they did. And now on to week 3. I'm excited for Louisville.
Yeah, lot to be excited about. I mean, it is nerve-wracking, and it's the first time you're going against somebody that you feel like is on your level, but also probably will be favored in that game. Not that it matters, but my initial line projection is that Louisville will be favored by 9.5 points. We'll see what ends up happening.
Really?
I do think, and some people think that that's being too generous on Indiana. I've seen somebody say that, and this is probably not even realistic. Somebody told me they think it'll be closer to 17, and I don't think that's realistic at all. I think it'll be no more. Again, 9.5. Again, I don't know if that's generous. I'm not Vegas. That's just my thoughts. Mitchell, I don't know if you're looking it up right now, but there may or may not be a line available at the moment. Is there?
I'm not looking it up. I was just looking up who Louisville's played. I guess
they played Murray State. They played their FCS opponent last week, 56-0, and then they also played Georgia Tech, and they had to come back and beat them in the second half. So, and they have Jack Plummer, who Indiana's familiar with in some way. He played at Purdue, but he's also been very underwhelming as Louisville's starter, and so we'll have to see what happens. He's a 6th-year senior, so I mean he's been around the block a time or two, obviously, going against somebody like Taven Jackson or Brendan Sorsby. So we'll just have to wait and see. Mitchell, you got any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'm back all the way on the Hoosiers. They're going to beat Louisville by 1,000. Whatever the line is, take a money line. I'm just kind of looking at some of their – this is so off the cuff. I have not watched them for a second. These guys got no shot against the Hoosiers.
Well, there you go. It's nice to have confidence back, though, because the past 2 years, it has been nothing, especially if you followed us on This Week in Indiana Football when we did that podcast. That was miserable after the first few weeks. Last year, there was some hope, I feel like, for a little while. But after the Nebraska game, it just feel like the wheels came off. And I'm hoping that the wheels stay on this year. And right now, things are trending in the right direction. So thanks for checking out.
This is how we're going to end right here.
Go ahead.
This is all you need to know about Louisville. Louisville plays 9 quarterbacks in blowout.
They did do that against Murray State.
9.
They played 9 quarterbacks.
What am I even reading? Dude, these guys got no shot. Send us off. Indiana by 1 million.
Indiana by 1 million from Mitchell Paige. Thanks for listening. Obviously, check out HoosierIllustrated.com for plenty more things from Alec Lasley, Kyler Staley, and the gang. Also, if you like us, check out the Out of Touch podcast. It releases every Wednesday on my YouTube channel, John Alden, or you can find it on Spotify. We're a bunch of goofballs who love to just talk about a bunch of nonsense. So thanks for checking us out, and we'll see you next week.